And then on that, we expect the defense to struggle on Saturday, which is what brings me to this next question. Almost a joke, but also not. How many times should Davis Mills throw the ball? Last weekend, he had 56. You just mentioned that number. And then last year against Washington State, threw for 504 yards, but also threw the ball 50 times. On Saturday, what do you expect from Davis Mills, or what should he throw?
As much as I've been calling for Stanford to throw the ball more and open up the offense, he should not be throwing the ball 50 times. That is not the winning philosophy for the Stanford Cardinal. Yes, they have listened to the many people in the fan base, many people in Nerd Nation who have said, use these wide receivers, use these quarterbacks that we have, modernize the offense. But they have gone full air raid in a few of these past games, including last year's Washington State contest, where in that one, Mills was pretty efficient. You're looking at closer to 10 yards attempt. In this Colorado game, largely because of an inefficient first half, only at 5.5 yards per attempt for Davis Mills. So, yes, he throws for over 300 yards. I thought he looked good in the second half, but that 51 attempts did not net Stanford what they would expect it to. And it came at the cost of just 21 rush attempts. That's a type of ratio that would have been unheard of in the intellectual brutality era. Davis Mills was the leading rusher, 36 yards and a touchdown. And he actually looked fairly mobile, and I think he should continue to use his legs when the defense gives that to him. But they really went away from Austin Jones and Nathaniel Pete. Austin Jones was bottled up in this game, and Stanford averaged less than 4 yards per carry. But on the season, Nathaniel Pete is averaging 10.4 yards per carry. Feed the man. He's a beast. I love his running style. He's going to drag tacklers a couple extra yards. And I think that, the lack of balance in the Colorado game was largely a result of falling behind early and having the running game not work so well. So you just completely abandon it and play air raid to catch up. If you are able to start faster, maybe don't kick those field goals in the red zone, maybe cash some of those in for touchdowns. You can play a balanced offensive style and use what we still believe is a very good offensive line and very talented running backs alongside what is also a good group of wide receivers and a potentially dynamic passing attack. You can have the best of both worlds, but you just can't allow yourself to have to fall into the type of hole where you just have to throw the ball all over the yard to catch up.
And I'm with you 100% here. They need to find more balance going into this week. Davis Mills attempted 50 last year. The year before that, KJ threw 43. And then in 2017, they threw 20. Because basically, Stanford was trying to find, how do we beat Washington State? Do we go run heavy, try and win time of possession? Do we say, you know what, we're just going to chuck the ball all game long because we're going to be in a hole and we just need to catch up? So it's been that battle because Stanford lost to Washington State now 4 straight times, needs to find a way to get wins. It's a tough team to play. It's a new head coach, right? But they're still not have a great system to beat them. And they've really struggled recently. And I'm totally with you. I really like Nathaniel Pete's running style. And I think he's done a lot better when the offensive line has provided him less. When Austin Jones has a hole, he's been a beast. He's been phenomenal. And he's looked great, has 3 touchdown runs of the year. But Nathaniel Pete's a rusher who's going to get you yards even when you don't expect it, even when the offensive line doesn't execute. And for much of that Colorado game, that's exactly what happened. Against Oregon, they would have shifts, they would have movement, and the offensive line was able to handle it. Against Colorado, they would do a lot of stunts up front, and Stanford could not handle any of it, and it showed. The offensive line didn't do much, and it eventually meant that Davis Mills was throwing the ball all game long. But that's not a path to success. Stanford needs more balance. I expect Davis Mills to be a lot better after a week of practice. Of course, last week, his first half was basically just a practice because he had been in isolation all week long due to those COVID testing protocol errors, whatever they're calling it at the Pac-12. But all of that meant that Stanford really struggled in the first half, fell into a hole, and then just needed to throw for their life for the rest of the day. And it didn't turn out pretty. It was not the style that Stanford wants to play. It ended up hurting them. And if they do that again on Saturday, they're going to be in for another tough day of sledding.
Last year, Davis Mills sets the school record for passing yards against Washington State, and the Cardinals still lose 49-22. And there were some fluky things about that game, but Washington State wants to get in that type of game. No, Mike Leach is not there anymore, but Nick Rolovich calls a similar system. I mean, the run and shoot is very similar to the air approach to how wide receivers run routes. It's all about making adjustments. It's all about beating your guy however you can do it. And guess what? When you play the type of defensive style that Stanford likes to play, heavy man coverage, that is a very, very difficult task for those cornerbacks. And I think that once again, you could see Washington State just roll up points and be content to let Stanford throw the ball all over the yard, throw the ball for 5 to 6 yards of attempt, and know that they're going to be more efficient in putting the ball in the end zone over the course of that game. And shout out to Ryan in the chat. I'll be discussing with Ryan about this game on Friday, so I'm excited to talk about it. But he's right. 0-3 is a very real possibility. So is 5 straight losses versus Washington State. So is 7 straight losses, overall. So there's a lot at stake for Stanford in this game. And just when you hear those 3 stats alone, you just see how the program has slipped and how you really need to have a recovery over the back half of this season just to prove that the old Stanford's still there. I mean, the 2021 recruiting class is getting some momentum now, but it is really struggling, and you need to see some results on the field to get it back there. But yeah, for the balance, great point on Pete's ability to make something out of nothing. And I think that is something they're going to have to lean on. But that they also just need to be willing to commit to the run, even if they do fall behind a little bit. Because I do think the fact that Colorado knew Davis Mills was going to throw made it a lot easier for that defense. I will say we've always called for Stanford not to be so generic and bland out of the gate on offense. And they did call, I believe, 5 passes and 1 run on that first drive, which resulted in a field goal. Could have been a touchdown, although I think it was good for Chet Toner to get his confidence back. But that is the kind of dynamic play calling you want to see. Pass when they don't expect you to and run when they don't expect you to. I mean, if you can do that, then maybe you can keep a defense on balance. But, I mean, this is a game where Washington State, they have the 14th ranked offense in yards per play in the country. That's second in the Pac-12. They are happy to get in a shootout with Stanford. And if Stanford decides to throw the ball all over the place, that's exactly what's going to happen. I don't think it's going to end well for the Cardinal.
And Washington State also has a lot of struggles